Hey guys, what's going on? Banana156 here with another video. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. Make sure to leave a comment. I do read all comments. But yeah, if you dislike the video, leave a dislike, and if you disagree with me, leave a comment below and we can talk about it. So if you guys have been paying attention to the channel, I just recently put out 2 videos on countries that will collapse in this coming century. Now think of the next 2 videos that come out, this one and the next one, as like a counterpart to that series. In the next 2 videos, I will be going over 6 countries in total that may become superpowers in the next century. I'm not going to say will, even though the title says that, because I don't know if they will or not. But yeah, with the New World Order, it seems like the U.S. is becoming more and more isolationist and is pulling out of a lot of areas, especially like the Middle East and Africa and Central Asia and stuff like that. And that could lead to a lot of countries falling and collapsing, like we went over in the last video, like the last couple videos, or a lot of countries making huge gains and becoming regional powers and stuff like that. If you paid attention to the world from like the 1990s to the 2000s, it's been fairly odd because there's only been one superpower. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the US was like the defined superpower. They were like the one superpower. And for most of history, it hasn't been this way. For most of history, it's been a lot of regional powers competing for power over smaller areas. And with the U.S. beginning to pull out of areas such as the Middle East and Africa and things like that, I do believe that the U.S. will continue to have influence in Europe and won't abandon them, and will still pay attention to America and places like Australia and Japan. But they're pulling out of areas like Africa and the Middle East. And I feel like this could lead to a lot of countries that are well developed for their region becoming great powers and potentially reaching superpower status. And yeah, so we're going to talk about 3 countries in this video and 3 countries in the next video. So yeah, the first country that could potentially be a superpower that I'm going to go over is the East African Federation. Now this is kind of a wild card one because it doesn't exist yet, and it seems pretty unlikely. Like I say, it's like a 1 in 10 chance to potentially make it out. But it is set to happen by 2023, and it is going to be between Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and South Sudan, I believe, are all the nations. And they're going to try and form like a mega country. And now, this would be very difficult in most other places, but in East Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, the nations haven't really meant much because all of those nations have been basically drawn up by European diplomats and have no real history. So the nations could easily go and merge, and they could easily merge as one, which is like the main problem that most continents have in making a super nation for one continent. But the other problem is tribal identities, and this happens a lot with African countries. A lot of times the tribe supersedes the nation and oppresses all the other tribes within the nation. But with the East African Federation, I could see this maybe being less of a problem because there's no real dominant tribe. I don't think any of them could gain enough power to become a truly dominant tribe. So I think that could work. I think it could work as a balance, but it is a very important factor that could lead to the country failing. But the next thing that could be bad is global warming. Global warming could make it really hard for the country. But other than that, I don't think there's too many flaws with it. Other than a lot of the countries like South Sudan being a failed state currently, and it could be hard for it to unify because of tribes. It does have some things going for it. Like currently, Rwanda and Rwanda is in the top 10 for economic freedom or whatever, and along with Tanzania and Uganda are also in the top 10 for economic not economic freedom, for freedom and happiness, which is good. And if they could transport their institutions across the other nations, that would be really great for the East African Federation and could help it a lot. The next thing is Rwanda is one of the fastest growing economies in the nation, along with a few others like Tanzania, and yeah, but that's a little bit less impressive because they're small economies, so growth will be, like, if you grow a little bit, it's like a high percentage, so yeah, so it's a little bit less impressive, but still good to have good growing economies and a couple countries with really great freedom rankings, for Africa at least. And so yeah, it does have that going for it. And the next thing is, America is going, I've already talked about this, but America is pulling out of the region a bit, and they don't care about it as much, and I feel like the sub-Saharan Africa, where most of the nations don't make sense anyway, an empire will form there. And my money's on the East African Federation for the empire that will form there, but it could be any of them. And yeah, but not to mention that most of the neighbors for the East African Federation aren't very powerful. Like, a lot of them are failed states, and the only real threat could be Ethiopia in a couple years. But most of the other countries are like failed states or not powerful enough to threaten it. And I could see with East African Federation providing the stability that sub-Saharan Africa needs, it could pull all the other countries into its economic orbit and could become a real power in Africa. And I think one empire will. I just think the East African Federation is the most likely. The next country I want to talk about is Iran. Iran has been a power for almost its entire history. It's been often in the top 10 and often in the top 5 for powers throughout the whole area, throughout the world since like Socrates. It's been very powerful for a very long time. Well, it's not. It's currently weak. But it has all the tools to become a superpower. Iran has gotten as far as it is because it has great diplomacy, and it is great at taking countries out before they can even attack using diplomacy. Now, and not to mention it is in the mountains, which makes it very geographically defensible, and makes it very hard for other countries to take land there. And Iranians as a whole are good fighters as well, and they have good military. Like, the problem with a lot of other nations like Egypt is their population lives in valleys, and they've been oppressed by foreign powers for so long that they don't have a really great national spirit to form a cohesive military unit. Iran doesn't have that problem. It has that going for it. It has been itself. It's been independent for basically its entire history, and it has all the power, and it has a good geographical position to defend itself, and has a good military record. Now, other things going for it are, it has a well-educated population. It's about halfway industrialized, which is good. And the only thing that could stop it is its internal management. Its economy is in a recession right now that's really bad, at 14% unemployment, and the mullahs are really oppressive and not very good at government at all. I could see Iran really becoming a power if they somehow get rid of the mullahs and form another more democratic government. And then I could see them fully industrializing and using their highly educated population to dominate the area that they're in. Because the area that they're in is really not powerful at all. Like, to the west, there's Iraq, which is a failed state, Saudi Arabia, which I believe is going to fail soon, and you could see why in my past countries that will collapse video. And Lebanon is a failed state. All the other states are weak or failed, except for Turkey in the west. Turkey is the only major threat. And Iran already has influence in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, which is just great for a weak country. It's kind of incredible. And to the east, it looks good as well. Like, Afghanistan, Pakistan are both failed nations, or like Pakistan, I think, is going to fail soon because they have neighbors that hate them. They're not a very coherent nation at all, and they're just in a really bad spot, honestly. And Central Asia, also to the east, is going to have a lot of problems with global warming and overpopulation, and they have massively oppressive governments. So they're not a threat either to Iran. So I could totally see Iran coming in and taking control of the Middle East, especially after America starts leaving it alone, because America is now oil dependent or oil independent, and they also have a bad taste in their mouth from the region from 9/11. So I could totally see Iran coming in and taking over the region, with its only real threat being Turkey. The next country I want to talk about, and the final country for this video, is Ethiopia. And now, when I talked about the East African Federation, I mentioned how most of sub-Saharan Africa had no history of nation-states, and so it made really no sense for them to be there, and how an empire could form out of them, because the nations could easily fall. Ethiopia is the one exception to that rule. Ethiopia has been a nation-state has been like a centralized nation since around 500 BC, give or take a few centuries. But it's been a centralized nation for a long time, which gives it that advantage. And the next major advantage it has is geographical. Its climate, because of its mountains, despite being at the equator, its mountains give it a more Mediterranean-like climate, like Greece's, or, like Greece. And it gives it a massive advantage over the rest of that area of Africa, because it is nice and cool and just a good place to be, unlike hot savanna or like desert or something like that, or other countries like that. The next thing that Ethiopia has going for it is that it's beginning to industrialize, which no one in the region is doing, or no one for a really long way is doing. And Ethiopia its economy has been growing at an incredibly fast rate, and so it has industrialization and the economy going for it as well. And the next thing is that its neighbors are all fairly weak or failed states, like Iran's are. South Sudan is a failed state. Sudan is an Ethiopian ally. Somalia is a failed state. Kenya is not a problem. All these states are failed, and the only other state, like Egypt, they have almost absolute power over, because they're damming up the Nile, or the Blue Nile, so they hold Egypt's water supply hostage, basically, giving them full power over Egypt as well. Now, with exception to the East African Federation that I talked about earlier, there's no real country that could challenge Ethiopia, and the U.S. is pulling out of this area, so that means it leaves a power vacuum. So Ethiopia seems like it could rise to the top, and I feel like it's more likely than the East African Federation too. The only real problem with it is, even though it's been a unified nation for a while, it still has all these different tribes and different stuff like that. So that could cause a problem and could cause a civil war. But I feel like that if it does happen, civil wars normally prestage greater unity and great expansion. So that would be good for it as well. It would be tough. It would push it down a few more years. Or a civil war doesn't happen and it just keeps going. And with modern technology like trains and highways and stuff, it is making it easier to stitch together their different ethnicities and stuff like that. And now another great thing that it has going for it is it has a navy based in Djibouti, as Djibouti I can't say it. Djibouti is being like its facto coastline, so they can have a navy operated out of there, and then they can like police like the area of Somalian pirates and stuff like that, which the U.S. would be happy about. So yeah, Ethiopia has a ton of things going for it, and I feel like it is a very likely candidate to come out of Africa as a power. But yeah, those are the 3 countries that I'm going over in this video. Part 2 will be up next week, and we'll be going over 3 more countries. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. If you do, make sure to leave a comment. I do read all comments. And if you dislike the video, leave a dislike. And if you disagree with me, leave a comment and we can talk about it there. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys